Alright people, what's happening? I'm Jazzman back here again with another game. This time between tweek516 playing full faction Forsaken Waste, yay! Versus Egethy playing full faction Sundered Lands, boo! And I'm not the biggest Sundered Lands fan, being an Iron Fist Stronghold player myself. But looking to be an interesting game. We have High Warlock and Lichling being deployed for Tweek. Most likely a Lich deck, judging by the Rite of Power upgrade, and Lichling pretty much always ran when you're playing Liches. And on Egethy's side, we have what looks to be an Acid deck. Not something you really see too often. Amplify Acid on this mutated Drake, and Scouting Acid Craw moving up top with that reinforcement. Here on Noraglades. So, nothing else being deployed quite yet. Amp is only at 10%, and Tweek is going to get 10 Nora off his next Lich deploy, thanks to that leverage. And Liches are probably one of Forsaken Waste's best deck at the moment. They just have a lot of synergy with the pots, a lot of on death benefit stuff with Rites of Power, a lot of good cheap champions like the Lichling and the Bright Moon, which we've seen here, and very, very difficult to have to beat down just because of their respawning capabilities and their powerful ranged options as well in Lich King and the High Warlock, of course. But we'll see. Sundered Lands, definitely a strong opponent. Acid decks are something I've experimented with a bit on my own, and they've been pretty fun. Cobra Spitter can hit really hard with Sundered Exploit, as well as multi-attack. Acid Elemental, always a fun rune to utilize. Basically, being the acid everything. Everything about him is acid. Acid Grenade, Acid Aura, Acid Amp, Acid Eater. He's literally acid in a nutshell. But instead we have a second Acid Craw. So starting to think it may actually be Skywings for Egethy. Though he does still have the Amp, so could be wrong. Acid Craws, nice and cheap, coming in with reinforcement as well. Make for nice early game champions. When the priority, so basically in the early game, bodies outweigh pretty much everything. You just want deploys, you want to get your champions into play, you don't want to frivolously spend Nora on extraneous things like relics, equipment, if they don't automatically lead to kills. And cheap champions like the Acid Craw are very useful early game because it just lets you get things into play and into combat as fast as possible. Mid-game to late game, things change up a bit, but usually deploys are the priority. So we do have these two deploys up here, about to grab their top fonts, and usually on this map, it turns into something of a standoff on the top side, whereas a lot of the action happens down in this mid-font area, this choke point. But I have seen instances where players have captured their top font and then run their champion all the way down to help at mid. I've tried that myself on some occasions where my draws have been less than stellar. But in this case, I would think that Tweek will be sending this Lichling over to harass Egethy's side font. Just simply due to the Nora cost disparity between these two champions here. Acid Craw being more expensive and therefore more valuable to Egethy than the Lichling is, whose only real purpose is to be deployed for leverage and then sent off into combat and respawned as soon as possible, so you can get more leverages. But down here at this bottom font, we'll have High Warlock contesting against the mutated Drake. Probably not going to attack just yet, unless he wants to get hit by that deflect. Okay, so we'll actually see Tweek retreating from that mid-font, rather than contest. I'd I'd say that's a viable option. I think if you're playing Liches, you really have to be mindful of where the strengths of your deck lie. And if you're in a situation like this where you have a squishy ranged champion facing down, you know, 2 melee champions that are fast, they can get onto you with stuff like Phantom Dash. Probably a good thing to just sort of back up, play it safe for the moment, and rely on your good late game. Spawn as many pots as possible. Make it difficult to push into you. And honestly, on this map, being a choke pointy mid-font map, Forsaken Waste can reliably toss the font for a few turns, at least, while they build up, since it's fairly hard to assault the shrine as well as this font from your mid-font position. And we see an Eternal Lich being deployed extremely defensively here from Tweek, doing a little bit of Dark Favor action. I'm assuming he deployed it all the way back here because he wants to keep the pot, the phylactery, as safe as possible from any of Egethy's attacks. So if he deployed it in the Lich in this font here, the phylactery would have been deployed a lot closer, and Egethy could have just sniped it with a ranged attack or something. And if you're going to play defensive anyway, you might as well just go all in on your strategy. So Tweek setting himself up down there for the long con. Eternal Lich moving, Lichling moving somewhat ambiguously here, potentially moving towards mid or also moving to harass top. And we do see Dark Apprentice actually being deployed top with more leverage, more favor. He's a nice little support champion for Liches. Has a lot of abilities that boost Liches specifically. Leverage, of course. Worship Lich, granting global regeneration 3 for your Liches, keeping them alive for longer, as well as Lich Apprentice, being the only champion in the game with this ability, giving Liches plus 5 HP globally. So definitely a very strong centerpiece. And now we see that squishy ability. What was that? Phantom Dash, right? I know that was a book burn from High Warlock. And yeah, so he tried to Phantom Dash onto this mutated Drake, but the deflect actually deflected the attack back onto the Bright Moon, and so Bright Moon just didn't end up moving anywhere. I was assuming he was going to Phantom Dash, or he was going to try to Phantom Dash onto this Drake, and then Mind Wipe Aura, and then walk into the font, perhaps? Contest it for a bit, now that he has a pot in the back to respawn at. But it did not end up working for him. I'm pretty sure he had the AP to try that play on the Sand Lion here, but maybe he didn't want to put his High Warlock in such an aggressive position. So we see a second mutated Drake coming out, also with Amplify Acid, so Amplify now at 20%, amplifying the damage of all of Egethy's champions. So Egethy posturing somewhat aggressively. Not quite able to contest without a relic, but I think if I were in Egethy's position, I would definitely try to contest with a relic if possible. Just because, I mean, you're against a deck that's really good in the late game and is playing defensively, and with only 3 champions here, you do have the numbers advantage, and you would want to take the Nor advantage away as well, rather than give them space to deploy more leverage or more reinforcements. But it is Forsaken Waste, so it's difficult to make the call if you're in Egethy's position, because Forsaken Waste does have a lot of one-rounding potential on their champions. Essence Drain, Soul Bane, Soul Reave, Reaper's Blade, things like that. So Sundered Lands, even though your champions are normally fairly tanky, Forsaken Waste is naturally suited to counter tanky champions, despite the apparent lack of damage on some of their runes. So, kicking the turn back to Tweek, and at this point, Tweek is probably going to not contest because these champions all have more than enough AP to deal with that Bright Moon Lich. Even if he were to, for example, Mind Wipe Aura here, he wouldn't have the AP to walk into the font. He'd have to drop a relic, and that would sort of overextend his Bright Moon to the point where High Warlock wouldn't be able to support him without risking itself. And so we do see the Phantom Dash coming in onto this mutated Drake, doing a little Mind Wipe Aura after sapping its AP thanks to Punish, and a second Bright Moon Lich coming in here. So Turn Lich probably going to get a hit as well, and that 5 HP there is thanks to Dark Apprentice bestowing his buffs, his global buffs. And meanwhile up top we have the Lichling sitting pretty, sort of daring this Acid Craw to come contest. And he's not quite in contest range even with a relic yet, but he will be soon. And what was that? Oh, that was mutation. Okay, so he gains Acid Acolyte on his Drake thanks to the mutation. So we see an Acid Storm coming down, actually, onto these champions here. Healing up the Drake a little bit, but not really doing much else besides that. See another Phantom Dash onto, I'm assuming it's this Bright Moon, or maybe it's this one. Maybe he wants to get in the font and actually show. But I would say it's this one. Simply because it's easier to kill. And yep, there it is. So Acid Craw goes in, does not quite have the kill, even with the Shred defense. And Scoured, it would have been a perfect kill actually, but unfortunately Regeneration will save that Bright Moon. And even if it did not, there is a pot, a Phylactery at the back, ready for that Bright Moon to respawn at, once it does die. And just a minor thing to note here is that once your Liches do respawn at these pots, they lose the associated Lich Apprentice HP buff. They do not keep that through death. So, slight bit of anti-synergy there among Lich runes. But Dark Apprentice still definitely a worthy include, just for the leverage and the regen alone. So Acid Craw moving in, not afraid at all of that Lichling, though it does keep him more or less out of attack range. And it's always annoying when you're facing a flying champion or an amphibious champion on this map, topside, because they can completely ignore this impeding water and threaten your font from multiple angles rather than just across this singular narrow bridge that other champions would have to traverse. So there's really no good way for the Lichling to block the Acid Craw from the font here. I'm thinking moving here would be the best option, because then Acid Craw would have no way to... He would have to go all the way around, basically, and take more of his AP to contest. So down bot side, we have the Bright Moon getting hit, moving away, and the Acid Craw more than likely still going to live, because this Bright Moon I'm pretty sure it can Phantom Dash, but 28 HP plus SL bonus plus Hunter Walker. Definitely going to keep it alive here. And the War Banner coming down. Also topside. So Tweek putting a lot of extra Nora into keeping that font safe. And we have the Rite of Power from High Warlock, taking that Lich out on its own terms, and allowing this Bright Moon to grab the globe, as well as giving Tweek's champions a permanent damage buff. And that's sort of another part of the synergy with Liches, they can kill their own champions intentionally, have them respawn at pots, and buff their remaining champions. So Hungry Dead coming down, the ever popular grabby hands, as it's colloquially known, ensnaring everybody, keeping them from getting at the High Warlock, and doing a bit of damage besides. Of course, Sand Snipe, or Sand Lion, as it's been named now, is still within double hit range of this High Warlock, as well as this Bright Moon, and there is currently no other phylactery to respawn at. We actually see a Peridot Sphere coming down. Not a very common equipment, but definitely one with some potential. Gives a little bit of an AoE twice per turn on attack. And we're going to see at least 2 attacks here onto this Bright Moon. I doubt it will lead to a kill, since Egethy has deployed the Vindrax, 96 Nora, as well as the 25 Nora from the equip. So probably won't have enough Nora to finish with spells. But that is a lot of damage that Egethy will be pumping into these Liches, as well as taking away the 12 from Tweek's font. Still hasn't contested top with the Acid Craw, but we'll probably get in there. And I would definitely start chasing down that Dark Apprentice as soon as possible. So we see another mutation, the mutated Drake swapping from Scour to Acid Acolyte. And Vindrax, definitely going to be a pain to deal with. Now, Liches are unique, or somewhat unique, I would say, in the sense that a lot of their champions are not in fact physical damage. They have very little physical damage in their arsenal. They do have a lot of magical damage, though. And with Vindrax being vulnerable to magic damage, and having Resist Physical 3, Liches are probably more well suited than most decks to dealing with that Vindrax. So we do see the Acid Craw up top, rushing down that Dark Apprentice. Lichling devotedly going to his side, defending him. And now Worship Lich forces the Dark Apprentice to stay in the same place. So if Tweek wants to keep his regen, he will have to keep his Dark Apprentice where it is for the moment. We see some attacks going down onto this Acid Craw that dared to contest. And it will be going down to the High Warlock. Tweek can gather that globe. And that Hungry Dead actually doing a lot of work for Tweek in this position, simply because of how the choke point here works. All of Egethy's champions sort of are zoned off of the font contest here, having to run through this grabby terrain. And now this mutated Drake is, I would say, somewhat isolated and in danger from these Liches. And if I were Tweek, I would probably look to be deploying another phylactery somehow. Because otherwise, this Bright Moon is more than likely going to die. And yep, there we go, the second Eternal Lich coming down in the same place as the first one, putting out that phylactery. The interesting thing here is, with this matchup, Sundered Lands actually has probably the perfect counter to Liches in the Unstable Power Source relic of theirs, which does 10 damage to all relics in play. And as you'll notice, phylacteries have exactly 10 HP, so if Egethy is running that relic and decides to ever deploy it, Tweek is going to be in very dire straits, since he will almost certainly not have the capacity to redeploy his champions. But for the moment, we do see Mutated Drake moving into contest against that High Warlock. I would think, even with Deflect up, I would say that Mutated Drake might possibly go down. Forsaken Waste, definitely one of the most adept factions at one-rounding champions. Vindrax also boldly moving in to support his fellow Draconic brethren, while the Sand Snipe sort of hangs back and lets the Hungry Dead area dissipate. Scouring Jasper coming down, just more of a nuisance relic than anything else. Sort of something else Tweek has to deal with at some point. He doesn't want his champions to take continual damage, although the continual damage probably not that big a deal for him currently. I would think he would want to focus on killing the drakes that are approaching rather than the relic. He does decide to keep his Dark Apprentice where it is, by the way. So that Scouring Jasper not really doing much to hamper his progress. Jasper does 4 damage per proc, as well as inflicting 2 damage over time. So 6 damage total. I mean, technically 7, but regen 3 being 6 HP regen, so they're sort of canceling each other out there. So, kicking the turn back to Tweek, and let's see if he can kill that mutated. First, he's going to have to deal with that Acid Crop top, deciding to move his Dark Apprentice to finish it off. Smart, collecting the globe, and regaining his top font. And Dark Apprentice simply re-worshipping his Liches, giving them all regen again. So the High Warlock probably going to have to retreat here from this Vindrax. And the problem is, Vindrax, with the Acid Bomb, Tweek doesn't really have a good way to avoid having multiple champions of his hit, simply because of how tight these spaces are between the font and the shrine and the fighting area. So he's inevitably going to take quite a bit of damage. With a bone circle coming out, granting all Liches +1 max range. Very useful. And Vindrax taking more damage than he wants to from magical. We might actually see him go down this turn with a Soul Bane. Within kill range of that. But as far as the Liches themselves go, he's going to need a bit more than what he's got. Could technically transfigure and kill it with the breath from his avatar, but not really advisable. Instead, he's choosing to deploy El Sarai Bazaar. Grant a bit of AP to that High Warlock, and allow it to finish off the Vindrax. So, yep, there he goes. Vindrax going down without actually doing anything. That's a sore blow to Egethy. 96 Nora just down the drain. Doesn't even get the globe for his trouble. So Tweek managing to hold off this Dragonic Rush fairly well, despite being down fonts. Egethy equipping Acid Fang, more Amplify, currently at 30% now. And deploying another big dragon, Vex. So Vindrax goes down, Mama Vex comes out and is like, hey, you beat up my kid, I'm going to beat you up instead. How you like that? Corrosive Grenade actually being upgraded. Interesting. I wouldn't take Corrosive Grenade on Vex. I would take it on Acid Elemental. But I think Acid Bomb 3, definitely the superior choice in Acid, or even Deflect. Corrosive Grenade just doesn't do enough damage to justify its choice on a champion like Vex, who can get buffed to do more than 10 base damage. Also has Annihilate. More AoE. And we see Mutated Drake swapping Acolyte for Vigor now. Probably trying to go after that pot in the back. But unfortunately, he will not be able to quite reach it. So we see Bright Moon taking some beats here from the Mutated Drake, and Blood of the Dragon being cast. Also not a spell you see very much. Grants Damage Shield Acid to all Dragonkin in play. So everyone's got Damage Shield, but when you're facing down 3 ranged champions like Egethy is, Damage Shield isn't really what you want. But Blood of the Dragon is cheap. I think it's like 25 Nora, right? 25 or 30. Now, these Bright Moons actually will get damaged by the shield. But instead, they're just going to attack that Scouring Jasper that maintains the contest here. And Egethy is actually doing the right thing. Like, even though Tweek is managing to hold on very well, Egethy is maintaining the pressure. Basically, just keeping Tweek, keeping Tweek wrangled, sort of keeping his font contested, keeping the aggression up, not letting him build up his forces, not letting him get easy procs of Lich Apprentice. Basically trying to end the game before Tweek hits critical mass and gets too many phylacteries. So we see there the deflect coming down onto the Bright Moon. Of course, once this Bright Moon does die, it will respawn at this phylactery in the back. And High Warlock here getting another hit, followed by the Mind Wipe aura on the mutated Drake, preventing retaliation. And there we see a second phylactery, Cleric of Unrest, coming into play. Good little support champion, even for Meta Forsaken Waste. Normally I run him with Council Spells and Ritual, but in Liches it definitely pays off to take Phylactery Bound, because you do want those pots, as many of them as possible. Get your respawns going. And yeah, so basically Egethy's only real option to deal with that would be Unstable Power Source, since they're so far removed from his main forces. Very hard to make any headway here for Egethy. So we have Vex maybe going to do a Corrosive Grenade, finishing off that Bright Moon. Of course, it will just respawn at this phylactery. And I would say the game is definitely in Tweek's favor at the moment. This mutated Drake is not having a good time being surrounded by all these Liches. Could maybe get a kill off onto this this Eternal. And I would think... Okay, so we do see a Tornado. Huh. Alright. That does take out the Bazaar. And put some damage onto the High Warlock, allowing Vex to move in and grab the Globe. I think it would have been... He might have actually been able to get the kill onto that High Warlock if instead he Corrosive Grenaded the Warlock and then hit it with Sand Snipe. Because he does have 40% amp out, so that's a lot of bonus damage he's getting on his acid attacks. And then he could have used Mutated Drake to get a kill onto this Eternal Lich without it respawning. But in this situation, he only does get one kill, unfortunately for him. But we do see an Acid Storm as well being thrown down, and these spells are possible, by the way, because these deployment zones do not actually touch. So you do have this thin line of area where it is possible to play spells outside of the dead magic zone. So 2 spells leading to 2 kills, one of which being a respawn though. And he does unfortunately leave the globes behind for Tweek to collect, which he will almost certainly do. But Egethy definitely pulling ahead here after that turn. We do have the Lichling now threatening to contest top side soon. So Egethy will have to deal with that at some point. So we have Vex moving up aggressively. Sandlion moving in aggressively as well. And Bright Moon Lich grabbing that globe from its compatriot and then heading on into the font. After pacifying that mutated Drake with his Mind Wipe aura. So I think Tweek is definitely still in this game. But I don't know, Egethy does seem fairly adept at pressing his advantage. So we'll see if Tweek can't get any more phylacteries out for these Liches to spawn at. I'm thinking he will be in dire straits in the long term. And there we see another phylactery generator for him, Genesis Lich, one of the premier champions in a Lich deck. Vitality Creation, always useful in the late game. We see Invigorate going down onto this Eternal Lich. I'm thinking that might have been a small mistake. I probably would have saved it for the Genesis Lich on Tweek's next turn so that he could potentially get a Spirit Harvest off. Like a normal attack into a Spirit Harvest, maybe. Because if he gets a Spirit Harvest pot proc, then it would allow him to maintain the advantage that he does have quite well. Mutated Drake swapping his abilities now for Acid Acolyte. It does cost AP, so it's going to deny a double attack. Well, he's pacified anyway, so I guess it doesn't matter. My bad. Instead, he goes for the Acolyte, getting a little heal off of that Corrosive Grenade from Vex. And we're going to see Sandlion probably put a hit. He could actually put a hit onto the Genesis Lich and distract it, which would prevent any Spirit Harvest action. Barring Soul Reaver Cleanse, of course. But we see a Valdakai Guardian actually being deployed topside, as well as a War Banner in Midfond. And Valdakai Guardian is actually, I would say, an underrated pick for Acid decks in particular. It does have a little bit of synergy, Acid Acolyte, Acid Aura, bringing a lot of passive damage in addition to the Emerald, which can spawn with Acid Aura as well. And just a decently tanky, decently statted champion in general. So we see Sand Snipe getting a double hit onto this Bright Moon. Mutated Drake standing there menacingly. Not really able to impact the fight at the moment, aside from his Amplify. But Vex definitely positioned fairly far forward. Vex is something you'd usually want in the back, just pumping out bomb damage. But he did move up for the Corrosive Grenade here, so maybe we'll see an Essence Drain, Reaper's Blade, something kill on that Vex. And then Spirit Harvest it. I think if he does manage to get a Spirit Harvest kill here, he will probably run the game. Because after one of these champions dies, it will really only be the half HP Sandlion, the low HP Drake, and those champions won't really be in a good position to keep up the pressure onto this this font here. So we do see Phantom Dash coming down. Looks like he's going to get a try for a kill on the Mutated Drake. Deflect is down. So he's going to get the full damage, taking some in return thanks to the Acid Shield. Sorry, one moment, just got to take a drink of water here. Much better. These long games really do a number on my throat. Still not used to the recording stuff, but anyway, we do see the Mutated Drake taking more damage, and definitely going to get a Spirit Harvest kill. So there we go. Another pot, and also less amp on the board for Egethy. And see, that would have been prevented had Sandlion just moved up for a bit of a snipe poke on that Genesis Lich. He would have probably still gotten the kill onto that Mutated Drake, but it would have prevented the pot deploy, which is the big thing. Because now, yeah, see, and he's just going to deploy a Lichling, more leverage, and Vex pacified from the Mind Wipe Aura, and Tweek regains his Fond. And now Egethy is definitely in not so great a position. He's got this Vex forward here, but she can't do anything at the moment, being pacified. Probably just going to have to run back. Now, Sandlion could take out that pot. He is within attack range of it, which he will do. Or not? Okay. I was really getting worried there if he was going to put a second hit into the Bright Moon Lich. But no, he does one on the Lich and then takes out the pot. Of course, that does leave Sandlion in a fairly vulnerable position against these Bright Moons. I'm not really sure if that was worth it. I probably would have just hit the pot once and then retreated it, as he's retreating the Vex. See, and this is something that really takes a lot of game knowledge and experience to understand, is when enough is enough, right? Like, Egethy has thrown so much Nora into keeping this font contested, and he hasn't really made any headway off of it. Now, it is important to keep pressure on against a late game focused deck, but if you're just throwing your champions in and not making any headway, I mean, why would you waste your champions like that? You'd be probably better off playing for the late game and having your champions be alive, rather than having your champions be dead and not having any late game at all. So Tweek slowly taking control of this game again. And I'm not expecting these two champions here to last very long against the onslaught of Liches. Another big dragon deploy from Egethy though, Valdak, not giving in quite yet. And wonder if he has Divert up on that Vex yet. I'm thinking no. I'm thinking he saved it. Vex, full HP. Somewhat tanky with the Hunter Walker, 2 defense and SL bonus, so not really worth putting Divert on it just yet. Tweek grabbing a globe and thinking about what best to kill. I would say the Sand Lion, because you'd not only kill the Sand Lion, but you'd also take the equipment away. 20 extra Nora down the drain for Egethy. And we do see an attack on that Valdakite Guardian by the Lichling, followed by a retreat. Sort of poking at him, letting him know that he's not afraid, contesting that font as well. The Egethy has sent now 2 champions up top just to deal with this one Lichling. First the Acid Craw, which didn't really accomplish much aside from contesting for a turn or two. Now the 70 Nora Valdakite Guardian, which has to defend the font against this Lichling. But down here we do see the Sand Lion going down to an attack from Genesis. Perfect kill. And perfect globe snag. Leaving this Drake to contest, but it more than likely won't last more than 1 additional turn. And we see a second Cleric of Unrest for yet another pot. And this is why, on the rare occasion when I do play SL, I always include the Unstable Power Source. I think that relic is just too important when you get into sort of turtle-style matches with a lot of relics in the back, war banners and things like that. Unholy Tomb as well. Or, Zemi of Elements, or hidden relics like Rock Trap that you can predict. Always good to have global relic damage when you're facing a deck like this. So we have Lichling getting engaged and assaulted by that Guardian. Now, he will eventually lose that 1v1. That's not really a fight Lichling can win, but just the fact that he's distracting a 70 Nora champion with a 54 Nora one is more than worth it for Tweek. And as I said earlier, the sooner these Lichlings die, the sooner you can redeploy them and get a second proc of leverage. So down here, Egethy sort of, again, struggling to make headway. Valdak moving in, maybe going to Breath, maybe going to put up a Divert. And it sort of sucks that all he's got here are 2x2s. Clogging up this narrow choke point, sort of preventing Vex from retreating anywhere safer. So instead he sort of forced Vex to engage with this Lichling, having nowhere to go. And at this point I would say it's safe to say that Divert is up, probably on the Vex. Corrosive Grenade coming down, this nice little AoE. And Guardian's Treasure, wow. Guardian's Treasure being the legendary Guardian's Treasure being deployed for Egethy, keeping that contest and buffing all of his dragons. Still not quite managing to kill that Lichling, but also keeping up the deploys wisely with a Vexy Neodrake. Strong champion in its own right. 60 Nora, great stats for that price. And a nice easy way to get into the fight with Pounce. And a little bit of utility in Inhibiting Touch. Also, it does have Vuln Magic against these magic attack Liches. So honestly, probably not the best deploy at this stage of the game. But maybe it was all he had, maybe it was all he could afford, who knows. And this is definitely the power of Liches. You'll notice that Tweek has been on 1 font to 3 for several turns now, and he's still managed to keep in the game, thanks in large part to these phylacteries in the back, and their ability to just respawn all of his champions where necessary. Definitely a very strong deck, and we'll see here more than likely this mutated Drake kicking the bucket this turn. He'll probably eat the deflect with the Lichling first, which would kill it. Put it on cooldown, let him get another leverage proc, and then finish off the mutated Drake with his other champions. Got a double hit here with Genesis. Got a hit with Eternal. Hits with the Bright Moons. Yep, so there's the deflect. Getting eaten. Bright Moon punishing that mutated Drake for its transgressions. A little bit of extra damage there, and 2 hits, 1 hit, and not quite enough. But there we see the Hungry Dead finishing it off, as well as locking down that Vex for the following turn. So Vex, not in a good place, actually can't escape the Hungry Dead, even if it tried. Healing Breath having been used on the previous turn for healing. So no cleanse, barring Dragon God Staff. And Vex not going to be in a happy place, so she's just going to move up, get an Annihilate off, I'm assuming, before promptly being disposed of and turned into a pot by the Genesis Lich. Nah, I'm pretty sure it's still on cooldown by 1. But there is the potential for Call the Weak as well. Call the Weak, 8 loss of life, spawning a pot if it kills the target. And I'm pretty sure it's 45 Nora now. It did get a buff in the Forsaken Waste patch, making it a little more viable for Liches as a utility spell. So we see Peridot Sphere again coming out on this Bright Moon. So Annihilate, bursting everyone out. Peridot Sphere doing some AoE damage, and again the respawn. So Tweek really didn't lose anything off of that, except a minor positional deficit, having to run his Bright Moon Lich forward again. We see Vexy Neodrake with that Pounce, 21 damage Pounce onto the Bright Moon, since he does have Vuln Magical? No. That'd do 21 physical damage. Yeah, that. Oh, I see. So he had different upgrades. How did I not notice that? So normally, Vuln Physical is 2 Nora cheaper, so I usually go with Vuln Physical on all of them, but Vuln Magical, also a good choice. You want to be slightly... well, I guess it depends on what you're facing. Magical attacks are still fairly common. And big despoil there, grabbing 3 Nora Globes. I wouldn't be surprised if that refunded the entire cost of that spell, just by collecting those 3 globes for Tweek. And Dragon Fear having been cast onto this Genesis Lich, making it exceedingly difficult to get any more Spirit Harvest kills. And see, I think at this point, Tweek's issue is that he has managed to fend off this Dragonic Assault very well, but the champions he currently has in play just aren't really that combat focused. Like Cleric of Unrest, I mean, it has some damage, but doesn't really fight very well compared to other options that Liches have. His only real saving grace is that it's magic attack for dealing with this Neo Drake. And honestly, I wouldn't be surprised to see this Neo Drake go down this turn. Maybe. Nah, it's still too high HP. He would need more spells to take it out. And honestly, using like Soulbane and whatnot on a 60 Nora Neo Drake, not really what you want to be doing. Although, with the way Tweek is positioned here, if he does manage to take out that Neo Drake with a spell of some kind, he would be in a really good position to keep his font safe from any further contests, since Vex is still encumbered by that Hungry Dead. Instead, we see a Sirkin coming down. Vengeful Cripple. Probably a little bit late, but, you know, better late than never. Vengeful is something you want out as early as possible. And we see up top here, Lichling getting another hit and retreating against that Valdakai Guardian. Who is probably going to continue his pursuit and yet again threaten this top font of Tweek's. So a second Sandlion being deployed here, and as expected, the Neo Drake walks into the font, being no longer engaged thanks to Pacified. Not quite out of the Despoil AoE, however. So if it does die, it will drop a Nora Globe for Tweek. And Vex probably wisely deciding to move back, although with the bonus range being a factor thanks to Bone Circle, still probably within kill range here. And Hungry Dead doing its last bit of damage before fading. So yeah, definitely 35 HP. Tweek's priority will almost certainly be getting rid of this Neo Drake in his font. Maybe doing a Call the Weak on it? If he does run it, he should, right? In Liches? Yeah, you definitely want Call the Weak in Liches now. So we see a Soul Reaver. So he's going to Soul Reaver Spirit Harvest that Neo Drake instead. Probably getting a hit with Eternal first, and then the Spirit Harvest kill. And with that Spirit Harvest spawning another pot, he would be more than within his ability to just chase down that Vex. Getting 2 hits more from Eternal Lich. And Sirkin can get invigorated here, I'm pretty sure. For a kill, right? He does have... Eternal Lich alone won't be enough. But... You know, Cleric is could invigorate the Sirkin, get a kill there. So, what I miss? Spell Soulbane. So he does get a Soulbane kill, cursing everyone of Egethy's champions, and Ethereal Mindshank going down onto that Valdakai Guardian. Huh. It's fun. I don't really see Mindshanks anymore. They used to be sort of a mainstay in Metaforsaken Waste way back in the day, when equipment was more popular, negative equipment in particular. These days you usually just see Mind Shackle, but Ethereal Mindshank is nice because it does refund itself if it lasts long enough. And see, even here, like they're 20 Nora apiece, and Egethy actually had to use a Reforge, which is a 35 Nora spell to deal with the 20 Nora equipment. So even in that situation, Tweek comes out ahead in Nora. We'll finally get the kill onto that Lichling with the Acid Aura. And a second Valdecai Guardian here. So, it's looking like this is going to be quite a long game. Long, but not necessarily boring. Although, I think in this position, Egethy has finally had enough of assaulting that font and is going to probably just start turtling. I should have came prepared with a story. What could I talk about that would be interesting? Now, here's something. So, Sirkin was recently changed in the Forsaken Waste patch, and given the massive buff of Eternal Life, and this is extremely relevant for Liches since now one of their best champions is capable of reanimating at a pot if it happens to die. Completely ignoring the fact, of course, that heroes cannot be reanimated. Nah, I'm kidding. It was a completely meaningless change. Eternal Life is 0 Nora, and it was done as a troll more than anything else. So, unfortunately, meaningless buff, yet flavorful, in a sense, since Sirkin is a Lich. Now, we see a few hits going down onto Valdecai Guardian. Tweek ambling around, not wanting to save up as much AP as, more AP than necessary, rather. Just on the off chance that a punishing aura unit comes down. It's a good habit to get into. Stuff like that is what usually separates the good players from the great players. Not forgetting the minor details like that. And, you know, things like not keeping your champions against walls, as Tweek is also doing, in case of knockback. And top side, we see the Valdecai Guardian plopping down its emerald. Of course, that emerald will not contest because it is not actually a real relic. So, facing down the Demon Lich, getting his attack deflected. Was that a Dragon Claw attack? Nah, that was just a normal attack. There's no way he would be silly enough to Dragon Claw into an obvious deflect. But, yeah, so Demon Lich, probably going to set ablaze and prep that Valdecai Guardian for a kill on its following turn. No, the relic really doesn't bear considering since it can't contest, although I guess Dark Apprentice could technically take it out if it wanted to. And there we see the Healing Breath coming down from Valdak onto the bottom side Guardian, healing it up. But honestly, if I were Egethy, I would be fairly worried about these encroaching Liches. That's a lot of range that Tweek is fielding at the moment. And Sand Snipe sort of, see, I'd want to say carelessly moving up for an attack, but like, I mean, what more can Egethy do against this? Like, he has to retaliate at some point. But at the same time, like, how can he? I mean, he doesn't really have the numbers, he doesn't have, you know, the damage on board to deal with all these champions. Especially considering there's still a pot sitting at the back, waiting for something to respawn. So I would expect that Sand Snipe to be not long for this world. Sirkin in double hit range of everything. Another Eternal Lich coming into play with yet another Phylactery. And yep, as expected, Tweek is slowly going to run the game. Rite of Power coming down onto that newly deployed Eternal Lich, letting him get a nice little refund from the globe, as well as the second Dark Favor proc. Probably worth it at this point. 12 global damage, and the refund from the globe, keeping your champion in play. We see Sirkin getting hit, Bright Moon, Phantom dashing in there, and that Sand Lion is dead as shit. It is not going to be alive much longer. Bright Moon grabbing the globe, and probably going to do a Mind Wipe Aura here on... I'd Mind Wipe Aura the Guardian. Has more damage, but, you know. Metamorph. Okay, so he just does an attack. And another hit by Sirkin. And that is the end of the game. Tweek emerging victorious, stalwartly defending against those dragons. So, great game from both players, and I'll see you in the next one.